The first sign was a sound. It was not a natural sound. It did not belong to the world. It started as a low hum that made the air and soul feel thick. Then it grew into a deep roar that seemed to tear the sky itself apart. People in the street stopped and looked up. The blue of the morning was being ripped open by shapes of dark metal. Ships. They were huge and sharp, like knives cutting through clouds. They did not ask for permission. They did not send a message. They simply arrived and began to kill. Bright lines of energy fell from the ships. Where they touched the earth, buildings exploded into dust and fire. The air filled with the screams of people and the crash of a city dying. The Galaxy Dominion had come to Earth, and their first words were written in flame. Deep under a mountain, far from the burning city, was a place of quiet and cold light. This was the Earth Defense Command. On the main bridge, a large screen showed the destruction happening above. Commander Mr. Park stood very still, watching it. His face was like stone, but his eyes were tired. He had hoped this day would never come. Next to him, a younger man named Jin worked at a glowing screen. His fingers moved quickly and calmly over the lights. He saw the same terrible pictures, but he saw them differently. He saw patterns. He saw where the enemy ships were moving. He saw how they attacked. In his mind, it was like a game he had played many times before, a game of strategy and survival. "They are using pattern Delta," Jin said, his voice quiet and steady. "It is a standard attack for them. They use overwhelming power to cause fear. They think we will panic and surrender." Mr. Park did not look away from the screen. "And will we?" "No," Jin said simply. "We will not." Mr. Park took a slow breath. He pressed a button on the console in front of him. His voice was now heard by every soldier, every pilot, and every person in a position of authority on the planet. It was also sent directly to the alien ships. "Galaxy Dominion Fleet," Mr. Park said, each word clear and strong. "This is Earth Defense Command. You are in violation of our sovereign space. Cease your aggression and withdraw immediately. This is your only warning." He paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. "You will not get a second chance." For a moment, there was only the sound of the machines on the bridge. Then the main screen changed. The burning city vanished, replaced by a face that was not human. It was covered in green scales. Its eyes were yellow and slitted like a snake's. It had a mouth full of sharp teeth. This was Supreme Overseer Cathar. The alien made a sound that was probably a laugh. "You primitive mammals. You live on mud and rock. You think your words can hurt us?" He leaned closer to the screen, his yellow eyes staring out at them. "Your warning is as insignificant as you are. You have no technology to challenge the Dominion. Surrender your world. Your people will be assimilated. If you resist, you will be scoured from the galaxy, wiped clean." Before Mr. Park could reply, the screen went dark. The connection was cut. At the same time, the reports from the surface became more frantic. The bombardment was getting worse. On the surface, in the city of Busan, a man named Chul was not watching a screen. He was living in the middle of the disaster. Chul was a sergeant. He and his squad of Marines were on the streets trying to help people and fight back. It was a hopeless fight. A giant machine, a walker with metal legs, stomped through the port. It shot bolts of green energy from its cannons. Each blast blew up a dock or a warehouse. The human soldiers shot at it with their rifles, but the bullets bounced off its metal skin like rain. "Fall back!" Chul yelled into his radio. He pushed a young soldier behind a broken wall as a blast hit the ground where they had been standing. "Do not waste your bullets. Their shields are too strong. We need to move!" Chul was not a man who scared easily. He had been a soldier for a long time. But this was different. This was not a war against other people. This was like fighting a storm. You could not reason with it. You could only try to survive. He looked at the faces of his squad. They were young and afraid. He knew they were looking to him for strength. "We hold this line as long as we can," he said, his voice rough but calm. "We give the people time to run. That is our job." "Understood." His squad nodded, their faces pale but determined. Meanwhile, in a place that was not on any public map, a woman named Mina worked. Her laboratory was hidden under the ruins of a great university. The buildings above were smashed and burning, but down below the lights were still on. The air was cool and filled with the hum of powerful machines. Mina was an engineer and a scientist. On her screen, she saw the same attacks as everyone else. But she also saw streams of data. She saw the energy signatures of the alien ships. She saw the power of their weapons. She saw the strength of their shields. A small part of her mind was amazed by their technology. It was beautiful and terrible. But a larger part of her was angry. They were using this beautiful technology to destroy her home. One of her screens lit up with a private message. It was from Commander Park. The message was short, only 4 words. "The trap is set." Mina read the words and let out a breath she did not know she was holding. This was it. The plan they had worked on in secret for years was now in motion. The aliens had taken the bait. They thought humans were weak. They thought they had already won. She turned away from the message and walked to the center of her laboratory. There, surrounded by thick cables and humming generators, was her life's work. It did not look like much. It was a large metal ring with a complex web of wires and crystals inside it. It looked quiet. It looked dormant. This was the key. It was not a bomb. It was not a laser. It was something much, much stranger. The Galaxy Dominion fought with power, but the key did not fight power. It made power irrelevant. Mina placed her hand on the cool metal of the machine. "Soon," she whispered. "Very soon." Back on the bridge of the Earth Defense Command, the mood was grim. Reports of destruction poured in from every continent. "They are not stopping," an officer said, his voice shaking. "Our Air Force is gone. Our missiles do nothing. We cannot touch them." Jin listened to all of it. He continued to move symbols on his tactical map. He was letting the enemy ships move where they wanted, but he was also gently guiding them. He was using their own confidence against them. He was making them think every human move was a desperate last attempt to fight. He was herding them, like a shepherd quietly directing a flock of wolves into a pen. Mr. Park watched Jin work. "Are they in position?" he asked quietly. Jin nodded, his eyes never leaving his screen. "Almost. Their mothership, the big one, is moving into a high orbit now. They want a good seat to watch the end. The rest of the fleet is spreading out below it, just as we predicted." "And the key?" Mr. Park asked. "Mina is ready," Jin said. "She is waiting for your command." Mr. Park looked back at the main screen, which showed the giant alien mothership hanging in the darkness of space, a silent promise of doom. He thought about the warning he had given. He had meant every word. The aliens had chosen not to listen. They would learn too late that humanity's warnings were not empty words. They were a final act of mercy. The first part of the battle was over. Earth had bled. Earth had burned. The Galaxy Dominion was sure of its victory, but the second part, the real battle, was just about to begin. And they had no idea what was coming. The silence in the mountains was a lie. Inside the Earth Defense Command, the air buzzed with quiet tension. Screens showed the continuing destruction, but the frantic shouts were gone. Now there was only a grim, waiting calm. Jin sat at his station, his face lit by the glow of his tactical display. The map was a mess of red enemy markers. They swarmed over every continent. To anyone else, it looked like a picture of total defeat. But Jin saw something else. He saw a pattern forming, like pieces on a game board moving into the exact squares he had predicted. The alien ships, confident in their power, were spreading out to crush the last bits of resistance. They were positioning themselves perfectly. An officer nearby slammed his fist on his console. "They just took out the last defense grid in Europe. We have nothing left to throw at them." Mr. Park stood with his hands behind his back. "Stay focused," he said, his voice low but heard by everyone. "This is not the end. This is the setup. Let them believe what they want to believe." On the main screen, the scaly face of Supreme Overseer Cathar appeared again. This time he looked even more pleased with himself. "Your world is broken," Cathar hissed. "Your pitiful defenses are dust. Why do you still resist? Your stubbornness is a waste of life. Surrender now, and some of you may be allowed to serve the Dominion." Mr. Park looked directly into the camera. "We told you to leave. You did not listen. The consequences are yours to bear." Cathar laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "Consequences? You have no power to give us consequences. Watch now as we bring your final hour." The screen went blank. A new alert flashed. The giant alien mothership, the World Eater, was moving. It slid forward like a dark mountain, settling into a low orbit directly above South Korea. It was coming to watch the end up close. On the ground, the war felt very real and very lost. Sergeant Chol and his squad were now hiding in the shattered subway tunnels under Busan. The air was thick with dust and the smell of smoke. The sounds of collapsing buildings rumbled above them like constant thunder. One of the young soldiers, a private named Lee, was shaking. He held his rifle so tight his knuckles were white. "They're everywhere, Sergeant. We can't fight them. What are we supposed to do?" Chul leaned against the cold concrete wall. He took a canteen of water and handed it to the private. "We do our job," Chul said. "We protect who we can. We wait." "Wait for what?" Another Marine asked, her voice tired. "A miracle?" Chul thought about the warning broadcast from command. "You will not get a second chance." He had believed it then, and he believed it now. "No," he said. "Not a miracle. A plan. Now drink your water and check your ammo. We move when I say so." Above them, the shadow of the World Eater blocked out the sun, turning the day into an eerie twilight. Deep in her hidden lab, Mina heard the deep rumble of the mothership positioning itself directly overhead. The walls of her bunker vibrated. Dust trickled from the ceiling. Good. Let them get close. Her fingers flew across a keyboard, calling up the final calculations. The key was almost ready. It was a machine that did not look dangerous. It hummed, softly, its inner crystals glowing with a gentle blue light. The principle was simple, yet it had taken humanity decades to understand. The universe had rules, like the rules of a computer program. Gravity, light, energy. They all followed these rules. The Galaxy Dominion's technology was built on one of these rules. The way energy flowed without resistance in certain materials called superconductivity. Their shields, their weapons, their engines, it all depended on this one simple rule. The key was a programmer's tool for the universe. It did not create an explosion. It would send out a single, perfect command. A rewrite. For a very short time in a very specific area, it would tell the universe to change one rule. It would make superconductivity stop working. Mina's console beeped. A new message from command from Jin himself. "The board is set. The key is yours." Mina took a deep breath. This was the moment. She typed in the authorization code. A countdown timer appeared on her main screen. It was set for 60 seconds. She opened a channel to the bridge. "Command, this is Mina. The key is activated. T-minus 60 seconds to ignition. I suggest you tell our people to take cover." On the bridge, Mr. Park nodded. He opened the global channel to all human forces. "All units, this is command. Execute protocol safe harbor. I repeat, execute protocol safe harbor. Find cover. Shield your eyes. The storm is coming." In the subway tunnel, Chul heard the message in his earpiece. Protocol safe harbor. He had trained. For this, though, he never really understood what it was. "Everyone against the wall," he barked. "Close your eyes and cover them with your arms. Do not look up, now." His squad moved quickly, pressing themselves against the cold concrete. They trusted their sergeant. On the bridge of the World Eater, Supreme Overseer Cathar watched the human communications with amusement. "They are hiding," he said to his second in command. "Like insects scurrying under a rock. It changes nothing. Prepare the final bombardment. We will wipe their largest city from the map as an example." "Yes, Supreme Overseer," the officer replied. "All systems are at full power. The energy cannon is charging." Cathar turned his chair to look at the view of the planet below. It was a beautiful world. It would make a fine addition to the Dominion. The countdown in Mina's lab reached 0. The key did not make a loud noise. It made a deep, resonant thump that was felt more than heard. A wave of invisible energy expanded out from the machine. It moved at the speed of light, a silent bubble of altered physics. It washed through the ground, through the city, through the atmosphere. It touched the alien ships in low orbit. It touched the World Eater. On the alien bridge, the lights flickered. Then they went out completely. The low hum of the ship's engines stopped. The view screens went black. The soft glow of control panels died. The only light came from the emergency strips on the floor, casting a weak red glow. "What is this?" Cathar demanded, his voice sharp in the sudden silence. "A power failure? Restore it." Trying, Overseer," an officer stammered, hitting his console. "Nothing is responding. Primary power is offline, secondary systems are dead, it's everything. The superconductors, they've just stopped." Panic began to spread through the crew. Their technology was dead. They were a giant, floating piece of metal. On the ground, Chul counted to 30 in his head. The deep thump had vibrated through the walls. He cautiously lowered his arm and opened his eyes. The world was dark and quiet. The constant sound of alien weapons had stopped. He risked a look up through a hole in the tunnel ceiling. The alien walker that had been stomping above them was frozen in place. Its glowing green eyes were dark. It stood completely still, like a metal statue. Chul looked at his rifle. It felt solid and familiar in his hands. He worked the action. It made its normal mechanical sound. A slow, hard smile spread across his face. He looked at his squad. Their eyes were wide, full of confusion and a dawning hope. "They're blind," Chul said, his voice a low growl. He raised his rifle. "They're helpless." He turned to his squad, his face set with a new purpose. "Now," he said. "Now we go hunting." The silence was the first victory. For years, the people of Earth had lived with the hum of technology. For days, they had endured the scream of alien weapons. Now there was only quiet. It was a heavy, profound quiet that felt louder than any explosion. In the subway tunnel, Sergeant Chul did not wait for orders. The message from command had been clear. The time for hiding was over. He moved to the collapsed entrance of the tunnel and peered out. The giant alien walker stood frozen mid-step, one metal leg raised. Its deadly cannons pointed at the ground, dark and cold. "Lee," Chul said, his voice cutting through the silence. The young private jumped. "See that joint where the leg connects to the body? Your launcher. Now." Private Lee fumbled for a moment, then shouldered the rocket launcher. He took aim at the silent machine. The whoosh of the rocket was a familiar, comforting sound. It slammed into the walker's hip joint. There was no blue shield to stop it. Metal screamed and tore. The walker tilted, then crashed onto its side with a ground-shaking thud. It did not move. A cheer went up from the squad, but Chul silenced it with a sharp gesture. "Save your energy. That was the easy one. There are more out there. Move out, watch your corners." On the bridge of the World Eater, the silence was filled with panic. The red emergency lights made the scaly faces of the crew look like demons in a cave. Supreme Overseer Cathar was on his feet, his yellow eyes blazing. "Report," he roared. "I want answers, not this darkness." "Overseer, it is a total system collapse," an officer cried out, his voice shaking. "It is not a power loss. The power is there, but it will not flow. The superconductors in every system have failed. They do not work. It is as if the laws of physics have changed." "Impossible," Cathar snarled. "Restore control." "We cannot. The engines are dead. The weapons are dead. Life support is on backup batteries. We are a rock, falling in a gentle circle." Cathar stared at the main viewer, which was now just a dark, dead piece of glass. He could not see the planet below, but he could feel its presence. A cold, hard knot of fear began to form in his stomach. The human warning echoed in his mind. "You will not get a second chance." Deep in her laboratory, Mina watched her screens. They were filled with data, not pictures. The key had worked perfectly. The field of altered physics was holding. It was a bubble about 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Inside that bubble, the Dominion's technology was just useless metal. Her console beeped. It was Jin. "The field is stable," he said, his voice calm through the speaker. "Their fleet is completely neutralized. No energy signatures, no movement. It is time for the next phase." Mina nodded to herself. "I am ready." She typed a new command. The key was not a one-time weapon. It could be fine-tuned. She began to focus the effect, making it stronger near the larger ships to ensure their systems could not reboot. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Command, the mood had transformed. The grim silence was gone, replaced by a buzz of controlled activity. Mr. Park stood before his crew. The enemy is helpless, but they are not yet defeated. We must move quickly. Initiate Operation Reclamation. Jin was already directing the global effort. All ground forces, the enemy is vulnerable. Their infantry and walkers are without power or shields. Engage with kinetic weapons. I repeat, use bullets and explosives. They will work. Across the planet, the message was received. Soldiers and militia who had been hiding in ruins emerged. They saw the same thing Chul had seen. The invincible alien machines were now just stationary targets. In cities, on beaches, in forests, the fight turned. Humans attacked the silent walkers with rifles, grenades, and missiles. Without their energy shields, the alien metal was strong, but it could be broken. The air, once filled with the shriek of alien plasma, was now filled with the bang of human guns and the crump of explosions. Chul and his squad moved through the streets of Busan like ghosts. They found a group of alien soldiers outside their downed transport ship. The aliens were trying to get the door open with manual tools. They looked confused and afraid. Their energy rifles were dark. Chul did not give the order to fire. He stepped out from behind a broken wall, his rifle pointed at them. "Surrender," he said, his voice loud and clear. The aliens turned. They saw the human soldiers. They saw the determination on their faces. One of them raised its tool like a weapon. A single shot rang out from one of Chul's Marines. The alien fell. The others looked at their fallen comrade, then slowly dropped their tools and put their hands in the air. It was not a grand battle. It was a cleanup, a reclamation, high above the human space stations, which had simple chemical thrusters and mechanical systems, were unaffected by the key. Small, tough shuttles, built for reliability over advanced technology, now launched from these stations. They flew towards the dead Dominion fleet. Their mission was not to destroy. They carried teams of engineers and soldiers. They flew next to the silent dark warships. They used magnetic clamps to latch onto the hulls. Then they began to cut their way inside with plasma torches. The same torches they used for construction and repair. On the bridge of the World Eater, the crew heard a new sound. It was a high-pitched whine followed by a thud. Then another. It was the sound of metal being cut. "They are boarding us," someone screamed. Cathar felt a terror he had never known. He was the hunter, not the prey. His great ship, the pride of the Dominion, was being broken into by primitives with simple tools. He was trapped in a dark metal box. He stumbled to the communication console. It was dead like everything else. He could not call for help. He could not threaten the humans. He could only sit and wait for them to come. He looked at the faces of his crew. He saw their fear. He saw them looking at him for a solution he did not have. For the first time, Supreme Overseer Cathar understood the meaning of the human warning. They had been given a chance to leave. They had laughed at it. Now the chance was gone. There would be no second one. The humans were coming, and they were not coming to talk. The cutting stopped. On the bridge of the World Eater, the only sound was the ragged breathing of the crew and the faint hiss of the emergency air supply. They all stared at the main door, waiting for it to be torn open. Instead, a small portable screen was shoved through the fresh cut in the metal. It was a simple human device. It flickered to life, showing the face of Commander Mr. Park. He looked calm. He looked in control. "Supreme Overseer Cathar," Mr. Park said. His voice was clear in the silent room. "Your fleet has been neutralized. Your weapons are useless. Your shields are gone. Your people on the surface are surrendering. It is over." Cathar stared, his mouth open in shock. He could not form words. The view on the screen split. Now Jin's face appeared next to Mr. Park's. He was young, but his eyes were old and knowing. "You were given a warning," Jin said. "You were told to leave. You ignored it. You thought you knew what we were. You were wrong." The view split again. A third face appeared. It was a woman with tired but sharp eyes. This was Mina. "You assumed our technology was weak," she said. "You were right. We did not fight your power. We did not need to. We simply turned it off. You sought to dominate the galaxy. We learned to understand its rules. That was your first and last mistake." The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one on the alien bridge moved. Cathar expected to feel the blast of a human weapon. He expected to die, but the attack did not come. Instead, they felt a deep rhythmic shudder run through the entire ship. Thump, thump, thump. What is that? Cathar whispered, his voice cracking. An officer looked at a simple sensor that still worked on battery power. His face went pale. Overseer, they are attaching tractors to us. Tractors? What are tractors? Primitive pulling devices, the officer said, his voice full of disbelief. They use magnetic force. They are not affected by our system failures. They are latching onto our hull. Many of them. The truth was unbelievable. The humans were not going to blow up his ship. They were going to tow it. Like a broken-down car. On the surface, the work continued. Sergeant Chol and his squad had gathered a large group of alien prisoners. The aliens sat on the ground, their hands on their heads. They looked lost and defeated. They had never been in a fight where their technology did not win for them. Chol assigned 2 of his Marines to guard them. Treat them firmly, but treat them fairly, he ordered. They are prisoners of war, not animals. We are not like them. He then led the rest of his squad toward the coast. A new mission had come in. A Dominion landing ship had crashed into the sea near the shore. It was mostly underwater, but part of it was sticking out. They needed to secure it and rescue any humans who might be trapped inside. When they arrived, they saw other squads already there. They were working together, using ropes and simple tools to pry open a hatch. There were no fancy lasers, just human strength and determination. They pulled a family of 3 out of the flooded lower deck. The family was scared and cold, but alive. Chul helped wrap them in thermal blankets. He looked at the half-sunken alien ship. It was a symbol of failed invasion. It was a lesson. In space, the operation was huge and quiet. Every working human shuttle and tug was involved. They swarmed over the dead Dominion fleet like ants over a fallen log. They attached magnetic clamps and tractor beams to the enemy ships. One by one, the great warships of the Galaxy Dominion were pulled out of their orbits. They were not destroyed. They were dragged toward the moon. There, in a wide, flat crater, they were placed carefully on the ground. A graveyard of arrogant ambition, the World Eater was the last and biggest. It took a dozen of the largest tugs to move it. They pulled it slowly, relentlessly, across the blackness of space. They brought it to the moon and settled it in the center of the crater. It sat there, dark and silent, surrounded by the rest of its broken fleet. Back in the Earth Defense Command, the main screen now showed a live feed from the moon. The sight of the entire Dominion fleet, impounded and powerless, was more powerful than any victory speech. Mr. Park opened a channel. This time he used a simple, low-frequency radio wave. It was a signal that even the Dominion's backup systems could easily pick up. People of Earth, he began. The immediate threat is over. The Galaxy Dominion's assault has failed. You fought with courage. You endured with strength. Today you have shown the universe that humanity cannot be broken. He paused, letting his words sink in across the planet. And to the Galaxy Dominion, he continued, his voice becoming hard as steel. Your vessels are being impounded on our moon. Your soldiers are our prisoners. They will be treated according to the rules of war, a concept you clearly do not understand. He looked directly into the camera, his gaze unwavering. The Galaxy Dominion is hereby expelled from the Sol system. You are no longer welcome here. Do not return. He took a final deep breath. You were warned. You did not get a second chance. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Jin finally leaned back from his console. His shoulders ached from the long hours of tension. He looked at the screen showing the moon. He saw the captured fleet. It was a perfect silent victory. Mina in her lab powered down the key. The gentle hum of the machine faded away. The altered physics field collapsed. The universe returned to its normal rules. But it did not matter. The Dominion ships were already captured. Their power was gone. She sat on a stool, suddenly feeling very tired. She had spent her life building a key to a lock she hoped never to use. Today she had used it. She had saved the world. But she felt no joy, only a deep and profound relief. On the streets of Busan, Sergeant Chul heard the commander's speech through his earpiece. He looked at his squad. They were dirty and tired, but they were smiling. They had done their job. They had protected their home. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in colors of orange and purple. For the first time in days, the sky was quiet. There were no alien ships, There were no explosions. There was only the peaceful evening and the beginning of a long recovery. The Galaxy Dominion had learned its lesson. They had assaulted Earth. They had been cautioned. They had not listened. And they had paid the price. The silence on the moon was absolute. No air carried sound. In the vast, dusty plain of a crater named for an ancient Earth scientist, the entire invasion fleet of the Galaxy Dominion sat. They were not wrecked. They were not blown apart. They were perfectly intact and perfectly dead. The giant World Eater rested in the center, a dark mountain of useless metal surrounded by its smaller ships. It was a museum of failure, built under the cold, watchful eye of Earth. Inside the World Eater, the air was growing stale. The backup batteries for life support were failing. Supreme Overseer Cathar sat in his command chair, a broken ruler of a broken fleet. His crew moved around him in the red gloom, their whispers filled with fear. They were waiting to die. Then a light on the simple communication screen blinked. It was the same portable device the humans had used before. A text message scrolled across it, in the Dominion's own written language. Life support failure detected. Stand by for evacuation. Cathar read the words again, not understanding. Evacuation? Why would the humans save them? It was a trick. A few hours later, the sound of cutting started again. This time it was at a different airlock. The door was pulled away. Instead of soldiers with guns, humans in simple, functional spacesuits entered. They carried boxes of equipment. One of them, a woman with a calm voice that came through a translator on her suit, spoke. I am Dr. Yun. We are here to provide oxygen and water. Form a line. We will escort you to the transport shuttles. Do not push. Do not resist. The aliens were too shocked and too scared to argue. They lined up like lost children. The humans gave them each a portable oxygen pack and a small drink of water. Then they were led through the cut hull and into the waiting, brightly lit human shuttles. Cathar was the last to be let out. He walked through the corridors of his dead ship, a king leaving his empty castle. He stepped into the human shuttle. It was cramped and smelled of metal and people. It was not a warship. It was a bus. He was taken to the lunar surface and put on a larger transport ship with hundreds of his crew. The ship flew them back to Earth. They did not land in a city. They landed in a wide green valley surrounded by mountains. There were simple, clean buildings there. It was a prisoner of war camp. The gates were not locked with energy fields. They were simple metal gates with human guards. The guards were armed, but they did not point their weapons. They just watched. A human officer addressed the new prisoners. You will be housed here. You will be fed. You will be treated with basic dignity. This is not a punishment. This is a consequence. When arrangements can be made, you will be sent home. Cathar was given a small room with a bed and a window. He could see the sky. He could see the green of the grass. He saw that this world was not just mud and rock. It was alive. He had tried to kill it. And now it was keeping him alive. A week later, a meeting was arranged. In a plain room with a table, Cathar was brought face to face with Commander Mr. Park. Mr. Park was alone. He had no guards. You spared us, Cathar said, his voice a dry rasp. Why? We would not have done the same for you. Mr. Park poured a glass of water and pushed it across the table to the alien. I know, he said simply. That is the difference. We thought you were weak, Cathar continued, staring at the water. You did not have our technology. You did not have our empire. You were right, Mr. Park said. We are weak in the ways you understand. We fight amongst ourselves. We make mistakes. But our weakness taught us something you never learned. What? Restraint, Mr. Park said. We learned the cost of power. We learned that the strongest action is often the one you choose not to take. We built a weapon that could rewrite the rules of the universe, and we vowed to only ever use it to turn off a fight, not to win one. We gave you a chance to leave because we did not want to use it. You forced our hand. Cathar was silent for a long time. He finally took a drink of the water. It was cool and clean. What happens to us now? He asked. You will stay here until we can build a ship, Mr. Park said. A ship? You are giving us a ship? A simple one. With simple engines, enough to get you back to Dominion space. You will carry a message. Back in the Earth Defense Command, the work of rebuilding had begun. Jin was now helping to coordinate the cleanup of the cities. Mina was working with a team to dismantle the key. It was to be taken apart and its pieces studied but never rebuilt. It was a lesson they did not need to teach again. A year passed. In the shipyard orbiting Earth, a new vessel was completed. It was not shaped for war. It was a simple cylinder, built with robust basic technology. It was called the Messenger. The Dominion prisoners, including Cathar, were brought on board. The ship had a small human crew, just a pilot and a navigator. Their job was to take the ship to the edge of Dominion space and then return in a separate, smaller pod. The day of departure came. The Messenger flew away from Earth past the moon. As they passed the lunar crater, Cathar looked out a viewport. He saw his mighty fleet still sitting in the dust, a permanent monument to his arrogance. It was the last thing he saw of the Sol system. The journey took months. Finally, they reached a point near a Dominion listening post. The human crew transferred to their return pod. Before they left, the pilot handed Cathar a data chip. "This is the message," the pilot said. The pod detached and flew away. Cathar inserted the chip into the console. The faces of Mr. Park, Jin, and Mina appeared on the screen. They did not look angry. They looked serious. "This is the only communication you will receive from Earth," Mr. Park said. "Your people are being returned to you. Do not send another fleet. Do not send scouts. Do not come back," Jin spoke next. "If you return, we will not warn you. We will not fight your ships. We will not try to match your technology. We will simply erase it. And next time we will not be kind enough to turn it back on." Mina finished the message. "You thought you were masters of the galaxy. You are only masters of its tools. We have learned to speak to the foundation of reality itself. Leave us alone, or you will learn what true silence means." The message ended. The Messenger continued on its course, soon detected by a Dominion patrol ship. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The cities were rebuilt. The scars began to heal. Jin and Mina stood with Mr. Park on a balcony, looking at the peaceful night sky. "It is done," Mr. Park said. "Yes," Mina replied. "The key is gone. But the knowledge remains," Jin added. "The knowledge of what we can do, and the knowledge of what we should not do." They looked up at the stars. They were no longer points of fear of potential invasion. They were just stars again. Beautiful and distant, humanity had been tested. They had been pushed to the brink, and they had shown the galaxy that their greatest strength was not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to choose not to. They had cautioned the Dominion. The Dominion had not listened, and they did not get a second chance.